So hello from Green-Mopeds in London. So today we've got our two top of the range from a spec perspective off-road bikes that we thought you'd like to have a look at. This is the RFN Apollo Black Edition, and this is the Talaria Sting R Pro. So these are both 60 mile an hour bikes, 74 volt, 72 volt based. We'll do what we normally do. We'll go around them, highlight some of the differences, and hopefully that will help you in your research. So let's get to it. Okay, so the background has been covered before, but both of these bikes are essentially out of China. Talaria have sort of grown out of Suron, whereas this RFN has actually grown out of a company called Apollo, and Apollo have been around for many years with different sorts of bikes, quad bikes, petrol and electric. So in this respect, Talaria are actually new to the game. In fact, they are new to the game compared to Suron as well, of course. So the bikes are basically aimed at the same thing. The RFN does come in two road legal versions. This 72 volt Talaria doesn't come in a road legal version in the UK at least. So if you want a 74 volt based or 72 volt based 12 kilowatt road legal bike, from as far as we're concerned, as far as we can supply, the RFN is the way to go. There isn't the option of having the Talaria Pro road legal. They might change their mind and bring that in, but at the moment, that is not an option. Okay, but these are obviously both the off-road versions. So starting at the front, the obvious thing to highlight is that the Talaria has a light at the front, RFN not so. You can turn this light off on the Talaria if you want to be a bit more stealthy, but it is at least available. From a sort of size perspective, a couple of things to note. The seat height on the RFN is a little bit higher than it is on the Talaria. Okay, so obviously two ways of looking at that. I'm taller, so I might prefer the RFN. Shorter people might prefer the Talaria. So they're 84 centimeters and 86 centimeters. Okay. Next thing is about weight. So the RFN is actually lighter than the Talaria. So it's 68 kilos with the battery loaded, and the Talaria is 76 kilos. Not necessarily going to make a lot of difference, power to weight ratio and all that sort of stuff maybe, but not a lot of difference there. Okay. The other thing is about how much weight they can have, as in how heavy can you be on it. So the Talaria is 100 kilos and the RFN is 120. Okay, so again, that might be something to consider. If you're heavier, you might be forced to go down to the RFN route. If you're a lighter person, you might choose to have the Talaria. Okay, in terms of sort of like the design, what you'll notice, and we showed this in one of the other videos, is that this frame here on the RFN is a classic off-road frame. It's got a big dip in it, and that is obviously for the structure. The Talaria one is different from a Suron, even though it might look to be similar. It is actually different. It's the same sort of rigid design. So if you're talking about which bike is maybe made for off-road, you might argue that the RFN has been made for off-road because of that design. And you see it a lot in off-road bikes. You have this big curve in the main part of the frame. Okay, but it's not saying it's wrong or bad. It's just different. Okay. Other things to talk about while we're at the sort of looking around the bike stage. So the RFN does have a smaller rear wheel. So these are both 19s at the front, but on the RFN, it's 18 at the back. Okay. Now, of course, there's nothing to say you can't change wheel rims and things like that on the Talaria. And in fact, in the menu system, you can actually set different size wheels. So you can get different size wheels on them. It's just that this RFN comes with a smaller rear wheel. Okay. One of the big differences between the two is actually how easy it is to get the battery out. So when we're talking about batteries, one of the things that you obviously need to do if you want, or if you live in a flat or something like that, is take the battery out. On the Talaria, this is a new design, this lid, and it's made to come off completely. On the old Talaria Rs, it actually just folded open. It is fair to say that on the RFN, there is a bit of work to do. So in here, there are some clips that release. You've got to take off the seat, then release this, etc., etc. It's not saying it's insurmountable, and it's certainly not like a Talaria X3 where you actually do have to sort of jack the bike up, but certainly the Talaria has got an easier way of getting the battery out. Well, we're talking about batteries. Obviously, the big thing to talk about is capacity. So on the RFN, it's 74 volt based. Okay, so the bike is actually more powerful by definition than the Talaria. Voltage equals acceleration. Okay, so if you had these two bikes side by side and everything else being equal other than the voltage, off the line the RFN should have it because it's 74 volt based, not 72 volt based. Okay, but when we talk to, so that means in combination with the battery, you're talking about a 43 amp hour battery on the RFN and a 40 amp hour battery on the Talaria. So what does that mean? That means basically 2.8 kilowatt hours of energy in the Talaria and 3.1 kilowatt hours of energy in the RFN. So basically that means 10% more. Again, if everything was equal, there'll be 10% more capacity in the RFN than in the Talaria, which therefore means, in theory, 10% more range. Might not translate to that because obviously these bikes are not equal. 72 volt based energy voltage on the Talaria might mean that it actually consumes the battery capacity more slowly. Okay, so it doesn't necessarily mean anything. It's just, again, if all things were equal. Okay, so 3.1 kilowatt hours on the RFN and 2.8 kilowatt hours on the Talaria. What does that mean in practice? Well, in the manual, RFN are quoting a 100-mile range. I find that hard to believe just on the maths. And of course, it depends on how you're riding it. And we'll talk about ride modes in a minute. But these are 60-mile-an-hour bikes. And you can literally do the maths on the battery and the power and work out its theoretical worst case range, because it's literally done by maths. But of course, it depends on how you ride it and the power. So as we're talking about power, the power is slightly different too. So 5.5 kilowatts continuous power, which is the rated power of the motor. We've talked about what that means in the past. But on the RFN, it is 12.5 kilowatts of maximum power. Okay, whereas on the Talaria Pro, it's 13.4 kilowatts. So again, all things being equal, the Talaria should outpace the RFN if everything else is the same apart from power. But of course, you've got 72 volt with 13.4 kilowatts versus 74 volt with 12.5 kilowatts of power. So it's probably going to net out to be about the same. Okay. When you net all of this out, including battery capacity, range is probably going to be about the same. Performance is going to be about the same. Pretty much, I would say, on paper. Okay, so let's just have a look around the bike. So you've got the ability to adjust the suspension in various ways, front and back. So on both bikes, you can adjust preloads and rebounds and all that sort of stuff. On the rear of the bike here, you can adjust here on the Talaria and also on the RFN. It's also, you can do it at the bottom. Okay, so again, pretty much equal. A few differences and a few improvements, I would say, over the standard Talaria are. So you've got better brakes now on these ones, and you can see these are pretty more substantial than the RFN. The discs are a bit more substantial as well, but thicker than the RFN. You've got a chain guard on the Talaria, which you don't have on the RFN. The chain is more substantial on the Talaria. They've upgraded it over the standard Talaria R, and again, more substantial than the RFN. You'll see that the sprocket is bigger on the RFN than on the Talaria. Okay, so smaller sprockets may be better acceleration, but you know, I suspect it will all basically net out to be the same. It would be interesting to actually do a drag race on these two bikes side by side just to see. Notice too that the Talaria does have a rear light. What Talaria do is actually they wire up these bikes for on-road, whether they are on-road or off-road bikes. So the loom on this bike, the Talaria, is already ready to be road legal capable. Okay, it's just that, as I said, it's a commercial decision that the Sting R Pro is not in a road legal form in the UK. That's the only reason. Technically, the bike would just be homologated, have a different dashboard and lights put on it, indicators. It already has a horn, already has the ability to turn the lights on and off, but it doesn't have brake lights. So you could, in theory, I suspect, make this road legal by working out what's needed, which would be brake lights, indicators, a road legal dash, a road legal light. You could put it through MSVA, which is the way to get these things registered, and you possibly could make it road legal. But we know we've tried it on an off-road bike before, but it is all about things like brake switches and stuff like that. Anyway, looking at the bikes from above, you'll see that the seat is a bit more substantial on the RFN, or it's bigger. I mean, they're both, nicely padded and everything, but there's obviously more seat on the RFN. So we talked about battery, power, etc. Chargers. So here's the Talaria charger, and what you'll note about this is different from the other Talarias. It is 15 amp output, 15 amp, if you can see that. So that means that charging time on this is going to be between 2 and 4 hours, possibly down to 2 on the 2-hour side because it's 15 amp. On the RFN, you've actually got a switchable charging capability. So you can either have 5 amp or 10 amp. Not too sure why you would slow charge it. If you're doing it a lot, I could possibly see why you would slow charge it. As an aside, none of these batteries like being charged when the battery is below 0. Okay, so it mentions it in the manual, which I have to say, the manual for the RFN is very good. It includes part numbers, it's got well laid out, and I think that's because of the sort of heritage of this bike, as in Apollo have been around for a long time. But they say in the manual, do not charge batteries, or it is not possible to charge batteries if the batteries are below 0. So you should remember that. If your battery is not charging, and it's in the middle of winter, and your bike has been out overnight in -3, don't be surprised that it won't charge. Okay, so that's chargers. Now, when we come to the bike itself, sitting on it, you'll see that you've got, standard master cylinders, which you would top up with .4, which is .3 or .4 there. This is .4, and the layout is somewhat different. Here, you've got a nice color display on the Talaria. Okay, so it talks about miles per hour, state of charge. You can get into a menu system, and there's quite a lot of information you can get out of this bike. So things like average energy, maximum speed. Here it's gone up to 61.4, average speed, etc., etc. Okay, here you can set wheel sizes if you did change the wheel, etc., etc. So there's a bit in this that you won't find on the RFN. The RFN dash is fairly simple. Okay, so here it is. It's pretty much, if you can see that, it's pretty much, that's about it. It's going to give you, you've got your miles or kilometer button there. I'm sure if you can see this. And then you've got your trip. Okay, so that's pretty much all you can do on this bike. Around here, you've got your modes. We'll come back to the Talaria in a sec. So it's got a reverse, which you don't have on the Talaria. To be honest, I'm not sure you need it on a bike that's this light. Then you've got your 3 modes. So rocket mode is equivalent, if you like, to the hyper mode on the Talaria, other than this only works for 9 seconds, but it can be pressed again straight away. Okay, so that is full power, 9 seconds of boost, if you like, and then it will go back down. But you can just press it again and then carry on. Okay, so what you do is you take it off the side stand, squeeze the brake, and it will go into ready. You can see. And here you've got, again, I hope you can see that, that means rabbit mode. So there's tortoise mode, and there's rabbit mode, which are speed limits like you get on most bikes. And then you have the rocket mode there. Okay, so that's obviously going to govern your top speed and also affect range. But as I said, pretty simple. That's about it. And it's fairly straightforward. In case you don't know, the key to start it is sort of tucked down here. Okay. All right, so that's that one. On the Talaria, it's pretty similar. So it says wait at the moment, which means it's in standby, if you like. So the throttle is dead, and obviously the side stand's down, and there is a sensor there. So you can flick up the side stand, and it's gone into ready already because I pressed that button earlier. And here you've got your different modes, and the modes are changed through this: Eco, Sport, and Hyper mode. But unlike the RFN, you can leave that on all the time. You don't have to redo it after a certain amount of time. Okay, so in theory, if you want to be whizzing around at 60 miles an hour all the time, this would be the easier bike to do that on. Okay. All right, so 60 mile an hour, both of them. Slightly more powerful on the Talaria, slightly bigger battery on the RFN, possible faster charging time on the Talaria because of the high rated charger, more easily removable battery, I would say, front light, horn. The bike either comes in this black with red stripe or black with a blue stripe, but obviously that's just stickers and you can take them off. One of the sort of big differences which might sway you is down to actually the price. So again, pretty similar bikes in terms of power, performance, etc., but the price of the Talaria is $4,895. The price of the RFN is $3,995. So you're talking about £800 difference. So your question is that worth it? Do you want the brand that you know, which is most people know, Talaria, or do you want a bike that on paper is more powerful with more battery, bigger, etc. Okay, so hopefully that's given you some insight into these bikes. They're very popular, certainly off-road ones more than the road legal ones. And if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us. If you would like to subscribe to our YouTube channel, please do so. And thanks very much.